Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the webinar for the NIHR Clinical Future Leaders Fellowship. My name is Tom Pratt. I'm a program lead in the Personal Awards team, and I'm delighted to be joined by Professor Waljit Dhillo. So, Waljit, if I could hand over to you to just give a bit of background about the NIHR, please.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so I'm going to go through these quite quickly because I think most people will be familiar with NIHR. So NIHR's mission is to improve the health, but also the wealth of the nation. And the wealth is also important because if we haven't got any wealth, we won't have the health, and we haven't have the budget for NIHR or the Department of Health and Social Care for health care and research. So NIHR's mission is to obviously deliver high quality research. We deal with patients and the public. The part of this scheme is to attract the best researchers, and that's what we do at NIHR Academy particularly. We have world-class infrastructure and skilled delivery workforce. We work with the public charity sector, and we also have a remit in public global health as well. So NIHR Academy is all about people and their careers. So we coordinate training. We obviously have the awards, and this is one of them. And we want to attract the best researchers for the needs of the health and care problems that we've got facing us. And so the awards are there for career support and training, and to get the next generation of researchers to help us deliver the problems that we've got in health and social care. So this is our Beyond PhD offer, and this might come up in the questions of where does this fit in? And I know there's been some questions about exactly who might be suitable. And I'm not going to go through the others other than say there's obviously Beyond PhD is postdoctoral. So we have our postdoctoral awards, which was the advanced fellowship for people who are clinical doctors and dentists. There's clinical lectureships. There's also the Senior Clinical and Practitioner Research Award. So those are actually, that scheme is currently live, closing in a couple of weeks as well. And that's for people who've gone back into health and care with no research time and a way to get back in some research time. And then the Clinical Future Leaders Fellowship is what we're here about. And this is kind of in the latest stages of this, beyond your PhD. You've done a couple of years postdoctorally, and you're starting to develop your independence. And by the end of the Clinical Future Leaders Fellowship, you will be independent. And the idea is you'll be attractive to your university, so that they will be able to take you on with a permanent or a long ongoing tenured post. So that's the aim of the scheme. So that's where the difference is compared to some of the other ones that we're offering. There's obviously the global health, but that's on pause at the moment because the ODA budget's been cut. So this NIHR Clinical Future Leaders Fellowship is very similar to the UKRI Future Leaders Fellowship. It's been going a few years now, and some of you may be familiar with the OSCAR report, the Office for Strategic Coordination of Health and Research, that was published earlier this year. First one for doctors and dentists, second one for NMAPs and other healthcare professionals. And this highlighted the need for to address the falling numbers of clinical academics in the broadest sense. And so actually together, the funders have all come up under this umbrella of Clinical Future Leaders with a very similar scheme. So it mirrors the UKRI Future Leaders Fellowship. Cancer Research UK will be launching theirs. British Heart Foundation will be launching theirs. I think they've got webinars coming up. So if those areas are more in your interest, maybe you want to look at those as well. And the UKRI Future Leaders Fellowship launches February next year. So this has been a coordinated effort from the funders to create opportunities for people for long-term clinical academic careers. And Wellcome Trust have got their own 8-year scheme that people will be familiar with and are very much on board with this too. Okay, back to Tom.
What we're aiming to do with this award is, as Waljit mentioned, this was in response to the OSCAR report. So we're looking to expand the support for clinical academic careers and increase overall numbers, because the report was trying to address the issue of declining numbers. So we're looking to try and help that with a slightly different award in terms of the way it's structured, and we'll go over, how that is structured later on. And I think trying to particularly look at that area of the transition into research leadership roles and the start of the creation of a team around people. And I think the key difference for this is the longer term support, as we'll cover in terms of the way it's funded for the salary, in terms of a bit more of a joint funding of that salary, and also the longer term guarantees that we're looking for from the hosts. So hopefully this brings through a cohort of clinical academic leaders to hopefully halt that decline that the report has referred to. So in terms of career stage, so this is a little bit different from our postdoctoral awards, the general one, because that is broad from PhD submission up to not being a chair. So this is, as Waljit referred to, looking for people that are a bit further along in their postdoctoral career. So you're at the stage of starting to gain that independence, but you're not quite there as that established research leader. And it's also, the possibility, as with our other awards, we're looking at different factors. People might have been having a career break for various reasons. It could be, it may be clinical time has been the main focus of a career for a while and looking to return to an academic track record. Or it could be for personal reasons that, you've had to take time away, and this award will help you come back and establish that independence. And potentially also making a transition from different backgrounds. So the NIHR is, more applied health than other funders, and some of the other funders that have been mentioned that we're working closely with. So it may be that someone wants to apply to NIHR because they want to move to a bit more of an applied health background, from maybe a basic science or other areas that may not be in NIHR's remit generally. So in terms of who can apply, we have said that this will need to be done via a nomination process, and there may be questions about that we can answer later on, but this is in a similar format to the research professorship scheme, where you will have an internal nomination process that's limited to 3 per institution. And we are looking for, we refer to substantial postdoctoral experience. And I don't know if I might invite you, Waljit, to have so we did cover this in an earlier webinar, that we've not stated it's a set number of publications, it's not a set amount of grant income that we're looking for, because we're aware that people from different careers will have had different opportunities for those types of undertakings. So it's trying to base people on what opportunities they've had for impact. So I know this is a fairly regular question, so Waljit, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on how we would look at postdoctoral experience for this type of award.
Yeah, I mean, so I think we've deliberately, as you say, kept this vague. And the reason is to be inclusive. So as soon as we say it's 2 years, I mean, when I was coming up through the fellowship route through NIHR, to be honest, there were all these kind of numbers, and then it was percentage FTE. So what we've decided to do is kind of say, for this scheme in particular, there's the big expectation that Tom's going to come to is that the university are going to be paying some of the salary towards the end of it, and by the end of year 7 they are essentially kind of committing to a long-term post. So as a head of division, about to become a head of department at Imperial, I'm not going to take on somebody who's 1 year postdoc and promise an NIHR or any other funder that I will take them on forever, because they haven't got the track record. So this is where this comes from, is we're trying to be realistic in who universities or HEIs or whatever your background is, they're not going to commit to a long-term post and somebody who's just out of their PhD realistically. If they do, that's great. And then we can look at the postdoctoral experience that you've had and take into account the outputs from that. But realistically, this is probably going to be people who have done a couple of years postdoctorally, doing well, need a longer term postdoctorally, obviously, to become independent. And by the time they finish the FLF, they will be independent and they will be attractive to their university. And the university hence will then be committing to a long-term post. So I keep mentioning that because it's going to be a very key criteria for this particular Future Leaders Fellowship. So for the research professors, we absolutely mandate even more kind of buy-in from the host institution, and that's what we're offering here. We're offering 7 years funding for somebody. Predominantly the NIHR would be funding that, but the deal for that is that the institution then kind of supporting the applicant longer term. So that's the whole point of this scheme, really, is are you attractive to your organisation as a long-term clinical academic in the broadest sense?
Thank you for that, Waljit. The next area is just in terms of the profession. So, as we've mentioned a couple of times, this scheme has been launched in response to the reports for OSCAR, and we have said that this is open to registered health and care professionals as defined by NIHR. So that is, generally speaking, the nurses, allied health professionals, pharmacists, doctors, dentists. There is a full list on the NIHR website. We are looking to expand that in future years to bring in other backgrounds, so such as social care and even some of the non-clinical backgrounds. So that is a work in progress for future years. In terms of qualifications, so similar to our postdoc award, it's for people that hold a PhD or an MD. If there's any queries about that, then I'd suggest get in contact with the NIHR Academy team. We'll be happy to help with any queries you might have around the specifics of that. Similarly, it's if you hold a chair position, you're deemed to be out of scope for this particular award. If you've been in a chair position for fewer than 5 years, then the research professorship is the scheme that you would be looking at. Again, there are some questions about sometimes people have honorary professor roles. Again, I would always encourage people, if they're unsure about eligibility or any aspect, to get in touch with us and we'll be happy to advise. There is a criteria for completing relevant pre-registration training. I'm hoping that wouldn't be relevant for people looking to apply for this, but this is just in terms of you've got your professional registration, or for a medic, the equivalent would be you've completed your appropriate foundation training and registered with the GMC. Your proposed research program needs to be within the NIHR remit. Generally speaking, there's quite a few words around this, but just to be clear that the NIHR doesn't fund basic science or work that involves animals or their tissues. Again, just to stress, if you've got any queries about your proposal and whether it's in remit, please contact us as early as possible and we can advise and hopefully save you filling out a form if it's not in remit for us, because we're working closely with the other funders, so it might be that it's more suitable to one of the other schemes. And also, we are saying that you have to pick which postdoctoral award to apply for. So we have a few out at the moment. So there is the general postdoctoral award that you would need to choose which one to apply for. So you can't have multiple NIHR postdoctoral awards under consideration at the same time. So yeah, as I mentioned, this is the remit slide. So it's quite wordy, so I won't read it word for word, but hopefully people are familiar. But just to stress, where people normally fall down is that work is generally a bit too early in its development for our remit. So if you have a summary that you want to run by us or the research support service, always encourage people to do that, because there is always a few in each round where the remit's not been checked and it falls down at the remit and competitiveness check before it even gets to the committee. So in terms of what the fellowship offers, so this is a 7-year award in duration, so it's longer than our general postdoc. There are flexible part-time options available with that, in line with our other awards. So the salary time can be requested. What we ask people to do is, if they are asking for that, it's generally 20% that we'll allow up to, and you would justify how this clinical time complements the overall aims of the award. We're aware there are some craft specialties where 20% wouldn't be enough to remain up to date with the competencies. So if you're asking for more than 20%, up to a maximum of 40% for some craft specialties, we'd want to see strong justification for why that's being requested. We will fund the relevant costs for the research project. There will be a support post that will assist with the research, and that will come with a training and development budget of around £3,000 for that person as well. Crucially, and we'll come to this in terms of what we're looking for in the person, project, training and site, but there will be costs for the tailored academic and professional development program. So just to confirm, this is the program that you're putting together yourself. So it's a bespoke one that you'll be looking to develop, rather than just a general program that the NIHR runs. That could be part of it in terms of the NIHR leadership, but this is very much a bespoke program you're putting together. And there'll also be a budget for attending conferences as well, in line with our other awards. So just to run through, and I had to just change the slide slightly to provide a bit more clarification from the introductory one. So this is the table showing the contribution of the NIHR funding for the salary costs. So years 1 and 2, the salary costs will be funded by NIHR. And years 3 and 4, the NIHR contribution drops down to 75%. In terms of the application you'll be submitting costs for years 1 to 4, and in line with, if it's a university host, that would be using the 80% FEC contribution. What we will do is there will be a review after 4 years, and that will then be with the committee, and that will confirm the costs for and the approval for years 5, 6, and 7. So the initial application you'll be submitting to us will be for years 1 to 4, and then if approved for the further years after the panel review, the contribution from NIHR will be down to 50% for years 5 and 6, and then for the final year, NIHR will be contributing 25%, with the host picking up the remaining costs for that. So just in terms of the nominations that I referred to earlier, the host institutions are invited to nominate up to 3 applicants. We haven't said, in terms of exact metrics, but what we're looking for is to ensure that hosts are, if they're nominating more than one person, that they have taken steps to ensure there's a spread of nominees across professions, gender, and ethnicity. We've not said specific numbers for how that looks, but we are just expecting that everyone has a fair chance to go through that nomination process. And we want to see a range of people being nominated to be reviewed by the committee. So host support. So just to clarify what we're expecting from this, we expect this to be tailored to the applicant. So as we say with a lot of our awards, what we are not expecting is a letter just saying how wonderful the host organization is. You will obviously need to say why this setting is the best one for the candidate, but also what the committee will be looking to see is how that support is tailored specifically for this application, the support during the award, and then also the expectations of what is the support longer term as well. So what is the support looking like that takes them beyond the 7 years that we're funding? It's also different in terms of the tapered funding arrangement is different to what we've had before. So what we're trying to do with this is that we're aware that, at certain stages, an award funds, someone's salary, and then there's a cliff edge at the end where all your salary is funded by NIHR, and then that fellowship stops. So we're hoping that makes that transition a little bit easier at the end of the award, that tapering is in place, and the host support will be there as well to provide the longer term support. Waljit, was there anything you wanted to add about the open-ended?
No, I think we've highlighted that point, and we'll we can take questions as well.
So Waljit, I'm just going to hand over to you to take through just in terms of some expectations and how these applications will be assessed.
So I think most people will be familiar with person, place, project, and training plan. So person is all about you, and this is important that it's not just the weight of the CV. So we are very clear with the panel and the panel chairs that we're looking for the rough diamonds. We're looking for people with potential who are going to be the next research leaders. So and hence we've kept metrics out of it, because the panel will be diverse. The panel will be experienced. They'll be part of our usual advanced fellowship panel, and they will have a very good working knowledge of what a research leader of the future might look like, given their postdoctoral experience that they've had. So if you've got less, it doesn't mean, and you've got less outputs, that's fine. But if you've done well, given 2 years postdoc and your institution is supporting the long-term post, that's absolutely fine. So the person is probably the most important in terms of this scheme, in terms of any fellowships, really. We're looking to spot the brightest and the best who are going to be the researchers of the leader of the future. Project is obviously important. If you do a poor project, you're not going to have good outcomes. So I'm not going to talk about this slide, because you'll obviously have access to these slides. Usual methodology, statistics, PPIE, etc. is obviously going to be important, and an important project aim. Place is important. So it's not where your institution ranks in the university rankings. Is the place where you're doing it the right place for you and your research? So that's all about who's supporting you, mentoring you, the background in terms of the unit that you're in. Can they deliver the research and support you in what you want to do? And as always, for fellowships, training and development plan is very important. I often get asked the question, what's a good training and development plan? The best training and development plan for you is to close your eyes, sit in an armchair with a cup of tea or whatever else you want to drink, and think about what you need during your 7 years for this to be a research leader. And then you need to document that, cost it up, and if you're successful, NIHR will pay for it.
So I'll just run through the assessment stages. So the submission window is open at the moment. We did take on feedback from the previous webinar in terms of the timeline. So we have extended this one to close in March. Once the window is closed, then we will undertake a period of eligibility checking within the office. So again, just to emphasize that please check eligibility for yourself, remit, because there's always a relatively small percentage, but a percentage nonetheless of applications that don't make it to the committee because they've fallen down at eligibility. As Will just referred to, we'll have a range of different professions and people and geographies on the committee. So each application will be allocated to 3 different reviewers to assess all the areas that Waljit's just outlined. We will then have a meeting to decide which applications make it through that initial stage after the committee reviews. And then we will go out to external peer review. And this will be to subject matter experts who are just assessing the research proposal. So the committee will be judging the person, project, place, and training. The external peer review is just on the research. And it's mainly just to make sure if there's any areas that throw up any red flags that our committee might not have picked up on, and any areas for further discussion at interviews. The interviews will be taking place in July 2026. We'll be posting dates on the website shortly. And then the awards starting from autumn next year. So from the window opening to the first award starting is roughly around a 12-month process. And just to highlight the strategic priorities, these are ones that we're particularly keen to see applications from. Some of these have been long-standing strategic priorities for the Academy, and then more recently, joining social care, mental health, public health and health data science is researchers working in a local authority setting, and also the post-1992 universities and also non-university hospital practice settings as well. So we'll be looking to get a wide range of post applications as well. As mentioned in the tapered salary funding, the award monitoring will be based on annual reports being submitted to the Academy. And then there will be a formal committee review during year 4. And the idea of that is to just assess the progress to date and just to confirm the further funding after that as well. So more details will be made available to people when they're awarded in terms of the timetables for that monitoring. So there'll be some slides afterwards in terms of some QR codes, some useful links. And we'd now like to move to the question and answer section. So let's have a look and see what we've got.
So the first one is, so we've changed it, hopefully you can see it, to most upvotes. The first one is about host contribution. 300k over 5 years is probably needed, and NHS organisation's not going to be able to do that. When we put this scheme together, so I'm in a university environment. I also do clinical work in a trust, and I know that both trusts and universities are struggling up and down the country. So we're completely aware of that. The funders are all aware of that, but we're also aware that the Oscar report tells us there's a falling number of clinical academics, and I don't think it's fair that we have people who do a 7 or 8 year fellowship and then have a cliff edge at the end and have no job. that's not attractive for clinical academia. So if the funding isn't available locally to support the person, the funding won't be available long term to support the person. And that's kind of how it is. There's not a lot that we can do about that. So there are obviously the other schemes that you can apply for, but this specific scheme is about, same as a research professor at a lower level, really. We're talking about supporting people in the long term, and that needs a host commitment. And if you can't, meet that host commitment, then this is not the scheme for your organization. So, and the point of the host contribution is that they wouldn't be doing 100% research. So as you bring in the time for the host contribution, say it was a trust, for example, that gave 10% of the salary of the contribution, they might then do a clinic for that, for example. The idea is, as Tom says, by the end, otherwise you're 100% funded by NIHR, you're supernumerary to everybody loves you, but then you've got no job to go to. So the idea here is the partnership, whatever that is, whether it's a university and a trust, both are committing to this person long term. They would do some clinical work or healthcare or whatever your setting is. They would do research, and that's what you're contributing to and planning for your long-term clinical academic workforce. So that's the kind of idea behind that one. Will trials be funded? Theoretically, yes. The problem is trial unit costs are £500,000. The fellowship costs for salary plus FEC are a lot. So you're probably better looking at EME Advanced Fellowship, which is just closed, but we'll be opening again next year, or the HTA Advanced Fellowship. So we've joined up with EME and HTA, so whichever remit your trial fits into, and EME or HTA will fund the trial bit, and we'll fund the Advanced Fellowship bit. So that's that one. What's the next one? We're supporting a lot of requests in a large institution about these awards from both applicants and those that we're reviewing within triage. Maybe covered, but the substantial postdoc experience. Okay, so substantial postdoc experience is a fair question. So I think this one is so there's two parts to this. One is what will your host institution, what will you need to look like to be attractive for your host institution to support you? Because they are essentially, if you get this, supporting you long term. And for most institutions, that's going to be somebody who's shown a track record of doing something postdoctorally independently, and this will get them further along that pathway. If you haven't done that much postdoctorally, but your institution is supportive of you long term, that's absolutely fine. So we've kind of said realistically, it's more like, so if you were immediately out of a PhD, unless you've done spectacularly well, it's going to be very hard for you to compete against somebody who's done 3 or 4 years down the track, and it's very unlikely that a host institution is going to support you with a long-term post. So it's just being realistic. Where I kind of see this, and we kind of see it across funder, is you've done. It could be a lectureship, it could be a 3-year advanced fellowship or something like that for an NIHR, and you're going for your second bite postdoctorally into independence. That's kind of realistically where I think most of the competitive people would be in this stage. So hopefully that answers that one. If you're in
The next one is just
Yeah.
So I think we had one about number of applications that a contracting organisation can put forward. We have had this with research professors as well. So we've said that this is regardless of whether the HEI is the partner or the contracting organisation. I mean, we'll have to obviously see how this develops. We want to make sure it's a fair process for everyone, but we have said that to avoid particularly universities that might have relationships with a number of different hospitals, that universities essentially submit a high number of applications. So the limit is on the HEI, regardless of whether it's contracting organisation or partner organisation.
Next one. Do you want to take that one, Tom?
So I've got one about HR practice, which we did discuss this morning. So our HR practice does not allow us to promise an academic post, as all academic appointments must be made through an open application process. So how would such a policy enable us to make the expected NIHR commitment to this scheme?
So I can kind of answer that one because that's come up as well. So I guess the difference here is we would expect you to follow HR practices, but normally at the end of a fellowship, there isn't, we don't mandate, as we are here, that there's a possibility of an ongoing post. So if your HR practices don't allow it, we would still expect you to be advertising an open advert which this person would be essentially, you can't promise it, but there would be a post that's advertised that this person would be a good candidate for, because they've done 7 years of a postdoctoral fellowship. And you would hope, if the panel are picking the best people, that they would be very attractive to that organization. And just like the research professors, the host commitment letter will be looked at in detail. It will go into the contract. We will be looking at whether it's so for the research professors now, at 6 months, we start looking at whether the host institution have actually honoured their commitment. And a cross-funder, that's going to be an important part of this scheme, because if you can't commit to this scheme long term, that's absolutely fine. But if people are going to commit to the scheme, then they need to honour what they've kind of said in their host institution support letter. And for the last couple of rounds, the research professors, the chair has written to the vice dean or whoever has written the letter, if it's not clear, to clarify exactly what they're promising, because that's taken into account in terms of whether the award is made if they're shortlisted. So if they're shortlisted at panel and the letter is not clear, we will go back, not to the applicant will be copied in, we go back to the institution to say, can you tell us exactly what you mean by your letter? Because it's only fair that we enforce that, because people are honouring it. The whole point of the scheme is that institutions are backing their best candidates and are supporting them long term.
Thank you. And next one I've got is quite a wordy one. I'll try and summarize it, but it's basically just looking for clarification about where we think this sits in the pathway. So they've just put a number of scenarios about a clinical lecturer, an NIHR clinical lecturer. Would they be suitable if they've finished that, or would they be more suited to a postdoctoral fellowship? Again, I guess it depends. I mean,
it depends on the outputs.
Yeah,
it depends where you are in. You may have done a spectacular CL and not had much training left to do, and your institution is very supportive of you, and your trajectory is really good. So it's the same with research professors. Is what we're looking for is, what will this fellowship do for you? And if it means that this fellowship will rapidly progress your academic career into a tenured post, that's exactly what we're looking for. So the end of a CL could be right, but the end of a CL might be that you need your first advanced fellowship or equivalent to develop your CV further so that you are competitive for this. But the idea of this is leading you into a long-term university or trust or health or whichever bit of health you're in, but into a long-term post with a research component is the idea.
And I think, yeah, there's further context behind this question, but again, I think this goes back to, as Waljit referred to, we did previously have, we specified the number of years postdoc experience we expected to have, but that was quite restrictive for people from, different career backgrounds, people who've maybe been away, and it doesn't always fairly equate for, when someone's returned, it's not quite the same as someone who's maybe been continually working in that area. So I've tried to move away from certain metrics. So appreciate other funders might have that. So this is essentially kind of between our postdoc award as it stands at the moment and our research professor, trying to bridge a bit of a gap there for clinical academics. So next question. So will there still be advanced fellowships, and are these future leader fellowships replacing them? So yeah, just to clarify, advanced fellowships have now become postdoctoral awards, because we had advanced fellowships, we had academic clinical advanced fellowships for clinical for HCPs and MMAPs, and we had one for people based in local authority. So we do have a general postdoctoral award, which is spanning that whole, from PhD submission beyond. But yeah, as it stands, this is a standalone scheme. But again, we'll have to see how it develops. And Waljit, myself, and colleagues were talking before in terms of how this develops over the years. But at the moment, it's not replaced the postdoctoral award. That's still happening.
And it's probably worth saying CR UK and BHF have got rid of their clinician scientists, replacing it with this. And if this scheme goes well, we may be keeping the advanced fellowship, you know, for the first bit of your postdoctoral experience, but this is exactly what we want. So already with if you're coming back for a second bit of your advanced fellowship, so you've had, say, 4 years and you want another 4, that's fine. But for the second 4 years, and then we changed the wording this year to make it more explicit, we do expect some host contribution, because if you're that many years postdoctorally, then host institutions should be stepping up to say, yes, we're supporting this person, we want to support them long term. So this could, if things go well, be a replacement for that kind of second half of the advanced fellowship, because there is a fixed pot of money. And so this scheme is designed to increase the number of people who have secured tenured clinical academic posts, which I think for an applicant is really important, and for the community it's really important. And trusts and universities need people. So the idea here is that we're freeloading essentially the first couple of years, and then expecting host support from there, and hopefully the economic growth might have kicked in by then, and things might be a bit brighter. But people are certainly going to need clinical academics. It's part of the 10-year workforce plan, and so this is part of that, to address that.
A question about the spread of people being nominated. So someone's referred to, if we only employ doctors, can we submit 3 doctors or only 1? So, I mean, if that's the case, then we would obviously look to see the spread of other factors. And I think people can just provide the context. If there is a limit on the professions that's in a certain organisation, and we wouldn't want to punish that organisation, but we would just need the context of why those people have been. But yeah, it's not just on profession, so there would be other factors that you can look to ensure a spread.
But I think it would be fair to say, Tom, if you couldn't have 3 doctors if it was a standard, you know, hospital where there's a multidisciplinary team, because that's not playing the game.
I mean,
really
I think
there's
it's
a spirit
unusual
to
for us to have
scheme
an
as well.
organisation that only employs doctors.
Exactly.
So,
I was
we
going to
want
say
that context. So a question about, and again, I think there's a bit of a theme here in terms of the career stage. So someone's referred to 2-3 years postdoctoral, but with significant outputs and grants. And again, 2 to 3 years generally would be seen by a postdoctoral committee at the early stage. But if someone's had, you know, a significant research trajectory before their PhD, then that obviously puts them in a different standing. So, you know, I think sometimes it's just talking to the people that are going to help you put the application together to see that, you know, get independent views on where they view your career stage. But yeah, I think this is going to take a few rounds for people just to get a feel for, you know, do they think they're at the right career stage to apply for this one. So I think we've answered this with a slide later on. So I think this was maybe before the slide. So someone's asked if they can apply for a postdoctoral and a future leader fellowship. So the answer to that would be no. You need to pick which postdoctoral level award for the NIHR to apply, and you need to await for the outcome for that before we allow you to apply for another one.
And probably worth saying, some of these limits on numbers are all about actually not wasting applicants' time. Because, so for example, the research professors, we have nomination process the same, and we could have opened it up. And we know from UKRI Future Leaders Fellowship, they were flooded with applications the first time. So if the award rate is 2%, that's not helping anybody. So what we've done is limit the numbers, and you can see from the number of people on the call, there's a lot of interest. And for the research professors, for example, after nomination, there's about 35 people that go into the pack, and the award rate's been about 15 to 20% for the last, you know, since inception. So we don't want lots of people applying and then being disappointed, because that's not helping the research community either. It's much better to have a smaller number of people vetted by the institution in the broadest sense that go forward with a selection, so that they've got the best chance of getting through at the panel, and stand a reasonable chance.
There's a couple of questions here about the research program, because the salary funding, we're asking you to submit the costs for 1 to 4 years. What we're looking to see is a proposal that covers in terms of your plans for the full 7 years. So although the costs won't be fully included for the full 7 years. What we would look to see is that the plan for the full 7 years, and we appreciate this might develop over time, and the review will be not just necessarily here are your milestones, are you on track? Because with our other awards that are 5 years, or in this one's even longer, things will develop. You're submitting an application 1 year, and then you'll be starting it 1 year after that, and it's for 7 years. So things will change, but we're looking to see what the plan is for the full 7 years, even though the finances are just covering years 1 to 4, and there will be a review to see how that's developing. And if there's changes, then you can speak to the NIHR Academy during that, and the review will provide an opportunity to discuss that with the committee as well. I think we've got a question that's come through the chat. So a question about how can we call out institutions who are not embracing the diversity issue in nominations and promoting those in established groups and established pathways and ongoing support. They have the loudest voice at a local level.
Yeah, that's a tricky one, isn't it? I mean, that's why we've mandated the geographical, the spread by gender, ethnicity, etc. And it's worked with the research professors. So once people are at panel, then nothing's taken into account. It's the excellence of the candidate and the trajectory. But if people don't get in the room, it's kind of, I think the question's alluding to, then that's an issue, and that's why we've deliberately. So that's why we could have had a single Future Leaders Fellowship, but obviously remits are different for funders, and we have much more focus on training development plan and PPIE, etc. And we also have made the scheme very similar to the Research Professors Programme by insisting on that diversity of applicants, because unless we have the diversity of applicants in the first place, we're not going to get the diversity of applicants through the other end. And I think most people are aware at the senior level there's a lack of diversity up and down the country of research leaders.
A question about asking for a sense of what reviewers and committee members will be using to judge the competitiveness of applications. Or will have some postdoctoral experience, but what should people be mapping it to? So, I mean, in terms of we've shared some slides with general criteria that the committee will be using, and if people haven't seen the application form, in terms of how the person is judged, obviously various different parts of the form. The CV section is now linked to an ORCID ID, so it's just to warn people that needs to be updated, because the committee will be using that to look at outputs and grants and those types of elements of someone's CV. But also there is a narrative CV, so that's where the committee will be looking to see the context, and I think that's where we're trying to move away from saying you need X number of publications and a certain amount of grant income. That's your opportunity to say, here's my opportunity for outputs, here's my background, here's what I've been able to do with the opportunities that I've had, and your chance to show your trajectory. So the committee will be using those two different aspects to try and look at, how do we feel this person has done their previous work, and how are they looking to progress in terms of a trajectory. Waljit, anything you want to say about how they'll be assessed?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've moved away of, we kind of don't need much of an application process or interviews if we throw the CVs down the stairs, but that doesn't get us the best outcome, and that's kind of where we've moved to probably a 10-year period, is looking at the background of the applicant, looking at the research opportunities they've had and what the outputs are for that. So that's the important bit, is, and we've kind of alluded to this on several questions, of there isn't a right answer, right? But if you are, as the panel judge, to be on a really steep trajectory, doing really well, being very successful in your research area, and that is very different. The outputs for one profession may be very different from another. But if for your profession you are doing very well on a steep trajectory, hopefully you should be successful. That's what we're trying to pick out, is the research leaders in a diverse health and care system that will be the research leaders of the future. So that's where the metrics don't come into it, because it will be if you've had 5 years of advanced fellowship compared to 2 years of 50% local funding for a lecturer type post, the outputs would be very different. But actually, if the person had done 5 years at 100%, had produced 3 papers, and the others had produced 3 or 2 in a 2-year period, the other person's actually doing much better. So the panels are looking at the whole package of the person and the trajectory and the support. So it's all of those things that we've kind of covered in the slides, and any one of those, all of those are particularly important. And for this scheme, as we've said multiple times, it's the long-term support, because we're trying to support people into long-term posts.
We've got a question about how many are likely to be awarded available.
Don't know is the answer, because it
Yeah.
depends on the number of applications, the number above the line. We know from what we've seen so far from the numbers applying that there's a lot of interest. So it will depend on quality is always number one. So if there was not enough quality, there would be 0, because that's not a good use of taxpayers' money, and NIHR is always taxpayers' money. But I doubt that would be the case. And usually we've got more people above the line that we've got funding for. So it will just be how much we can stretch. Where number one, where the quality is, and then number 2, how much of the budget we can stretch to.
And we've also, it's very difficult to say how many. I mean, other than the research professorships, which is a fairly set amount, it's quite hard because the variability of professions and research proposals, it's quite hard to say what that will be. A question about if you've held an MRC Clinician Scientist Fellowship, are you eligible to apply for this? Yes.
Yep.
That would
And
be fine.
if you've had an MRC Clinician Scientist, you can apply for a UCA or FLF as well. So that's kind of what we're saying is, you don't need significant postdoctoral experience necessarily, but there will be people who are eligible, because that's the level at which people are often going to be going for a kind of long-term post and being attractive, and so you'll be competing with those people.
What I would suggest is that you maybe get in touch just to check the remit of the research proposal, because sometimes we do get people applying who are more suited to the MRC and carrying on that funder pathway. So if you have had an MRC Clinician Scientist, it might be worth just double checking the remit of the proposed research.
And it's worth saying for the UCARI Future Leaders Fellowship, there were caps on numbers for people that could apply from each institution, because the numbers were high. But from next year, in this space, if you're a healthcare professional applying to the UCARI Leaders Fellowship, as long as the host institution give that host support long term, then there isn't going to be a cap for the UCARI Fellowship.
Thank you. A question just asking for clarification about the assessment criteria. So our assessment forms are set out in terms of the areas being assessed: the person, the project, the training, the site, and support. So it is split in terms of 25% weighting on each of those. That the scoring is normally, particularly at an interview stage, that leads the discussion for the committee to decide, what's fundable. But they are seen as very important aspects of the application. So you need to give each part equal weighting in terms of your development for those. So I think we've got time for a few more questions. So what is the limit on cost for the clinical trial unit charges? The guidance says, with exception salary costs, clinical trial unit charges, and conference costs, this award does not have strict budgetary caps. So in terms of the CTU costs, it's normally around staffing. So we have had, in terms of trying to separate this from program grants, we say that there is no more, you wouldn't expect more than 30% for a person involved in it. And also for a senior one, no more than the accumulation of 2 whole-time equivalent. So it's more a cap on the staffing that can be costed to that, rather than it's X £1,000 that is the limit for that, because we appreciate there are some research costs that aren't staff related, and that will depend greatly on what's being proposed. So again, this is quite a tricky area, because sometimes it's trying to weigh up if there's significant CTU costs, is this more suited to be a program grant rather than a fellowship. Two application. Yeah, I think we've answered that in terms of, yeah, if you've got any queries about, because I realise that the rules around postdoctoral awards that you can apply for, there are different rounds going out. So again, if you're not sure and you're about to start an application, you've already got one in play, do contact us and we'll be able to advise you about whether that subsequent application is going to be eligible. Okay, one more, and then I think we'll just ask for a bit of a summary from yourself, Waljit. So, I mean, is the scheme likely to be repeated in the future? And if so, when? So, Waljit, do you want to?
Yeah, it'll be annual
on that one.
So I think all the funders are signed up to this, and CR UK and BHF, as I said, have changed their schemes so that they're kind of getting rid of their clinician scientist and replacing it with this. So this is here to stay, and will be an annual scheme for annual scheme for UKRI, and I suspect the same for BHF and CR UK. So I wouldn't have a mad rush if you're not ready this year or you don't get through this year. The whole idea of this is that this is a direction of travel from the funders of, you know, we want people to be successful, and then if they're successful to have security, which has come out of the Oscar report. And I think with the dwindling numbers that we've got, it's exactly at that kind of early. So a third of the professors in the UK are over 55. The numbers of people retiring are high, and so we're not getting universities, we know, and trusts are bankrupt. We get that, but this is to help the system to kickstart the new posts which are not happening up and down the country.
Okay, I think that's all the time we've got through. We'll have a look at the questions that we weren't able to get to, and if there's some common themes with those, we'll be looking to try and update our guidance accordingly, and we'll send any clarifications out to the attendees. But thank you, Waljit, for your time, and thank you everyone for attending the webinar. And we look forward to hearing from you soon, and look forward to seeing some applications from a number of people on the call.
Well, good luck.